After northern England, we continued north to Glasgow, Scotland's most populous city. Transferring at Glasgow Central, we stayed 20 minutes west in the suburb of Clydebank. Bus routes are another good option for getting around Greater Glasgow. The Glasgow Cathedral is dedicated to the city's patron saint and founder, Saint Mungo or Saint Kentigern. Always shown with a robin, a bell, a fish with a ring in its mouth, and tree branches. Images associated with Mungo's 4 miracles, which are also on Glasgow's coat of arms. The city's motto, "Let Glasgow Flourish," is from one of Mungo's sermons. Mungo is still relevant in Glasgow pop culture. Glasgow has several universities. Near the cathedral, the University of Strathclyde is named for the kingdom in which Glasgow was founded. West of town, the University of Glasgow is the second oldest in Scotland and fourth oldest in the UK. One famous alum and former professor was Adam Smith, author of The Wealth of Nations and considered the father of capitalism. Next to the university, Kelvingrove Park runs along the River Kelvin and passes several historic buildings. The Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum opened in 1901 and is free to the public. Its 3 floors house an eclectic collection, including paintings from Impressionist and modern masters. One exhibit of bronze pieces from Benin in Nigeria touched on Glasgow's role in the African slave trade and later colonization. But the museum agreed to repatriate pieces to Nigeria in 2022, and they're still on display with no notes or other explanation as to why. Another exhibit entitled Scottish Identity in Art showed how external works from some English artists and Hollywood portray Scots as some imaginary noble savages clad in tartan kilts, especially in contrast to the English armies of King Edward I. In reality, Robert the Bruce and William Wallace had contemporary armor and weapons at Stirling Bridge and Bannockburn. Kilts didn't even exist until 300 years later. But kilts are seen as so intrinsically Scottish now, there's no escaping anachronisms, especially in Hollywood. One thing that I intrinsically associate with Scotland is whiskey, and I've tried quite a few. One of my favorite distilleries was just west of us in Clydebank. Auchentoshan, as I was told, comes from the Scottish Gaelic for corner of the field, because the original 1817 illegal still was in the far back corner of the property. The rest of the field has been sold and developed, but the distillery continues to grow around the original spot, though it has been sold to the Japanese conglomerate Suntory. The distillery offers various tours, but as I've already toured several distilleries, I just went with a tasting. Video wasn't allowed during the tasting, and I wanted to be focused on the experience anyway. They started with a standard explanation of different alcohol percentages and aging in different wood casks. Then the actual tasting began. None of them were under 19 years old, and 2 weren't even available to buy at retail. But the one I was most looking forward to was our 200th anniversary edition from 2023. It was so good. But at 400 pounds a bottle, I opted not to buy one and went with a 50-pound bottle instead that was still excellent. As mentioned before, Glasgow was once part of the Brittonic Kingdom of Strathclyde, independent from Scotland for 6 centuries. Strathclyde's historic capital was Dumbarton, west of Glasgow. Built on Dumbarton Rock, a 33-million-year-old volcanic plug that rises 250 feet above the River Clyde. Strathclyde comes from Brittonic for Valley of the Clyde, and the Britons named this place Rock of the Clyde. Dumbarton comes from Scottish Gaelic for Fort of the Britons. The rock's twin peaks provide a strategic outlook, looking east along the Clyde back to Glasgow, out to the mouth of the river, and back up north to the River Lothian. Most of the fortifications are from the 18th century British modernization, but the castle was used in both world wars. North from Dumbarton, the train terminus of Balloch lies on the southern tip of the bonny banks of Loch Lomond. A tour boat was departing 15 minutes after we got off the train, so we quickly bought some tickets and hurried aboard.
And the bar on the lower deck will now be open for the sale of tea, coffee, soft drinks, beers, wines and...
Considered by many to be Scotland's most scenic loch, Loch Lomond is also, as our tour guide said,
it's the largest expanse of fresh water in Great Britain, 23 miles long.
The shores of the loch are dotted with former aristocratic homes. One of the grandest is Cameron House, owned by several prominent regional families over the past 600 years. The current mansion was built mostly in the 1830s. It was converted to a luxury hotel and spa in the late 1980s. The loch also crosses the border from the lowlands to the highlands of Scotland. The Highland Boundary Fault is the geological boundary that separates the two, and it passes right through Loch Lomond, underneath these islands. Before our boat turned around, we had officially passed into the Scottish Highlands. And to the north, Ben Lomond rises above the Highlands, the namesake of my childhood soccer fields. Back on land, we crossed over the River Lothian, the loch's primary outflow, which winds south to join with the River Clyde at Dumbarton Castle. It was lunchtime, so we found us some haggis, neeps, and tatties at the Waterhouse Inn. Balloch Castle Country Park lies on the southeast banks of the loch. A former lordly estate, the park has 200 acres of public recreational area. Including miles of walking trails that pass by some pretty spectacular trees. And beautiful flowers, including thistles, the national flower and emblem of Scotland. Scattered around the park, fantastical sculptures can be found. Carved from the trunks of fallen trees by a local tree surgeon, each has its own backstory. A link to the map of the carvings is in the video description. The park is also along the John Muir Way. The 134-mile trail crosses Scotland, terminating in Weir's hometown of Dunbar. Often called the father of the national parks, Weir Woods, north of San Francisco, California, bears his name.
Ye'll take the high road and I'll take the low road. I'll be in Scotland afore ye, but For me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond.
About 2 hours away by train and bus, the Falkirk Wheel is an engineering marvel to behold. Shuttling boats 35 meters or 115 feet between the Forth and Clyde and Union canals. As the name implies, the Forth and Clyde connects to the River Clyde near where we were staying in Clydebank. For 140 years, traditional locks linked the two canals, 11 of them in succession, until the canals closed in the 1960s. The canals were restored and reopened for recreational boating in 2001, and rather than force boaters to spend all day manually working the locks, an ingenious idea was hatched, and the world's only rotating boat lift opened in 2002. Taking 5 minutes to make a half rotation, boats swivel on 26-foot diameter ring, driven by a massive set of steel gears. There's also fun for kids who have absolutely no interest in all of this. In our next video, we travel east to Scotland's capital, Edinburgh. So please, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to keep following our UK adventures.